All right. All right, hey guys. So I got this Warbeast in a while back for a send and repair, and I kind of have this love for the send and repair game, mainly because I like repairing and fixing up things that people have had for a long time that they cherish a lot or have sentimental value towards. And in repairing it and giving new life that they can actually use it is awesome. It's a great feeling that I can't describe it. So when I get approached with doing very exotic third party stuff or things that are just, kind of crazy and out there, I don't really ever say no. I'm pretty much open to fixing anything. And I know a lot of modders kind of stay away from it, more out of respect to the owners of these things. It would be kind of disrespectful to be like, oh yeah, I can fix it, and then take it in and break it further or not fix it at all. Worst case, yeah, you would break it further, but it's just disappointing to send something to somebody and they just can't get it done. So while there's no guarantees, having the machine shop and the tools and just the 15 plus years experience doing these things, on top of being a machine builder and an automation electrician, I'm able to utilize those skills and experience to fix things that otherwise you kind of would just put on your wall and let sit there forever. So yeah, so this Warbeast came, and I basically want to do this video as how I go about things just from bare bones scratch, from having no knowledge, no previous anything. I've never opened up a Warbeast. I never even held a Warbeast before this, and I never even saw a Warbeast in person that wasn't inside of a box at the store. So with that whole saying yes to most anything, it comes with this territory of, well, now you have to figure out how to get to that point. So when the guitar first came, it was very evident right away that the switches were not replaceable. Yes, I could go spend 2 hours on some weird Chinese website and cross-reference the switches, because they're just these little micro limit switches. I could cross-reference them and get a return, not a return, but a replacement in a month, and put it all together and be like, hey, there you go. And a year from now, with light casual playing, it breaks again. I didn't really want to do that. So after about 10-15 minutes googling around, kind of doing some research, I found on Reddit somebody had mentioned that they had a problem with their strum switches on this guitar, and they had linked, somebody made a CAD 3D download to 3D print a new, not circuit board, but a new board that would house two standard key switches that we use now for all the strums. I was like, well, that's really cool, but the issue is as much as I have the entire machine shop and I have all the tools and all of that, I don't have a 3D printer. So it probably would be as simple as going to the library, but when I called up, I don't know if they know how it works, but the way they were explaining the sign-ups and the times and the this and the that, and there's a limit on how long a print can be. So I didn't think it would be too long, but they're not yeah, you can just leave that overnight. They're not gonna let that be. At least my local library, that is. I also looked into just having it printed by some cut rate company, because why not, right? And that was gonna be $25, and it would be 3 weeks just to get it. So I don't know. So my thought was, hey, got this machine shop you keep on talking about, got all these spare, just pieces of stock aluminum and stuff, and aluminum is very lightweight. So why don't we look at this 3D model? I'll throw it up on screen real quick. So why don't we look at this 3D model and just kind of use it as a guide or a reference? So we use the, there's you can see here, there's the middle part is just a little bit thicker, so the switch can pop into place, but then you don't need the whole thing to be thick. So they made the rest of it nice and thin. Probably, at least for theirs, it looks like it's a little bit thicker than the circuit board, but it's pretty thin. So I originally wanted to go into Blender or AutoCAD, and I was seriously just gonna measure with a measuring tape in the software. I was just gonna measure the CAD model and just write all of that down. About a minute in, I realized, and the three softwares I had, it was not, so 3 programs I had, it was not going to be feasible to even get any realistic measurements. So I figured the best way to go about it would be to measure the original board, look at the picture of the 3D CAD model, and then kind of just make up my own thing and engineer up a little piece, because it's pretty rudimentary, it's pretty basic. So you see here, after about a half hour, I got my measurements of where the switches will go, centered and perfectly spaced. I have my 4 holes for mounting. On the bottom there, you see the thickness of the whole plate, but then there's the 200 that I just circled that is actually going to be the thickness where the switches are. So what we're going to do now then with all of this is we're going to go over to the mill. And, you know, before we go anywhere, we need to clean this up, because I did like a series of frets. I think I did like 3 sets of frets, and the plastic just gets everywhere. And, you know, as much as I try to clean up after every project, I generally, if I'm doing a whole bunch at once, I'll either forget, or I'll just say, hey, like, you know, tomorrow morning or the next day that I come out here, I need to just clean up before I start working again. I at least do that. I mean, I'm not perfect, and I've been accused of having a messy garage, and yeah, I definitely feel it. I spent like 6 hours yesterday reorganizing things, doing some spring cleaning, getting things, you know, ready to go, because I want to finish up, as I said, all those orders that I got from Etsy since like December. I finished a whole bunch of them, and I've still just got like a handful left. So, yeah, it's going pretty well. All right, so now we're going to be moving on to I guess, the bulk of all the machining here. And I want to keep this video short. I'm going to wind up, I think I mentioned it before, but I am going to be doing the build video first, and then I'm going to follow it with the play through, you know, like the play test, and, you know, doing songs and stuff on it. It's like a part 2. So this video will be just that build process. So here I'm fly cutting, and basically what I'm doing in general is I'm trying to true up the part. And what that means is that I'm going to make every side parallel to itself, so then it becomes like perfectly square to each side. You know, I wouldn't call it, I guess you could say it's parallel, but it's not like it's a cube, so you can't say it's a perfect cube. But all sides are square and parallel to each other. So basically how you do that, you know, it's, let's say, like, for this instance, it's a 3D, you know, plate. It has 6 sides to it. So you start off, I fly cut one side, then I file off the burrs and whatnot, then I fly cut the other side, file off the burrs and all that. So now those 2 sides are parallel. Because you could say the first side, I put, you know, like, I put the jagged side, let's say, in the vise, and then I milled the top flat. So that is now flat to the vise in the table. I flip it, that is now true to the vise in the table it's parallel to, and I mill that top part. Now those 2 pieces are completely true and parallel. Then I do the 2 sides, like the 2 outer length, you know, sides. And then I believe off camera I did the milling for the actual ends, just to clean them up and get the length, you know, just right and perfect. So then again, that way I have a perfectly true part. Oh, you just missed it right there. I hit I hit the table with the cutter because I was coming down too far. I wasn't reading my readout properly, and I guess even though I fast forwarded, I put a meme in there for GTA wanted. So now I'm doing that like curvature part. Um, I hope I showed the CAD model. If not, I'll retroactively go back and I'll throw the CAD model up either here or when I mentioned it in the earlier part of the video. But yeah, so basically the entire plate doesn't have to be the same thickness. Aluminum is very thin, or I should say light in weight. So the thinner I make it, the just lighter it'll get. So I only really needed to have it be thick where the switches would be, and I more or less just kind of eyeballed and copied what the 3D printed CAD part would have been. Again, I'm kind of doing this more or less totally by feel and eye. I mean, I did spend the time and I drew it all out and I wrote it up and whatnot, but for the most part, I'm generally just looking at a picture of something and then saying, hey, I'm gonna, like, I guess it's the crudest possible way to reverse engineer something, because it's not in my hands. I can't take it apart. I literally can't reverse engineer it. I can just look at it and say, yeah, I can do that, you know. So here's where I'm doing the holes for the tie downs, the mounting screws. This was actually a very satisfying part because when I put it on, the holes lined up just 100% perfect right off the bat. I didn't have to open the holes or anything, which, I mean, I've been doing this a long time now. I've actually been machining, well, I should say I learned light machining back when I was like 15. And then between having the machine shop in my garage and then doing it at work and stuff and in my career and whatnot, whenever I have either gotten the chance or more or less been forced to, I mean, as an electrician, you tell your boss, "Oh yeah, I have a machine shop at home." They're like, "Oh, sick. We don't have a machinist today. Can you do a bunch of random stuff for us?" And it's like, what I get myself into. Oh, and here, um, whether it was the thickness of the plate or whatever it was, when I put, like when I measured between the strum bar and the bottom of the plate, it was too high, and like the switches would have just flopped around everywhere. So I decided where it mounted on either side, I would just take, I think it was like 110 thou off, which is just shy of an eighth, and then I went, about a half inch in. That's like a 5/8 cutter, and I went, about 500 thou in. I know some of these numbers don't, they'll probably go over somebody's head or they won't make sense, but it's just simple fractions. It's very basic math. Like it's hard to say that because I guess I've been doing it for a while now, and for me it comes naturally. For people that do actual machining every day and use like CNCs and stuff, this is very cakewalky. And although I'm doing it all by hand, obviously, but yeah, it's very cakewalky. This part was actually the longest, most tedious thing because the cutter is so small that I have to hog out this hole with. I could basically only take about 20 thou cuts deep each time. So I would go down 20, I would go in the square pattern, go down 20, go in the square pattern 20. So I basically had to do that, I think, a dozen times for both holes. So I just, I did it off camera. A lot better. That's in there. Now I just need to install. This is the top. I polished this up. I finished it off, polished it up. Um, I did nick a corner, but it's also good because I had to file the corners to be flat anyways and be nice 90s. So if I remember correct, they fit in the tightest like that. Where's my other switch? There's my other switch. And I want to make them the same. And I also did make them a press fit. That way I will probably put a dab of glue in the crack on either side. But for the most part, very good. And now I see why the middle was thicker, so it could accommodate for the whole piece. Perfect. Alright, now I'm just gonna figure out, I'm gonna move this over to the table and start soldering it. Alright, so I want to do an overview of the whole entire guitar because I feel like there just isn't one around. The few people that have them modded, there's, there's not like they've explained what they did besides, oh, this button does this button does that, I replaced this, I replaced that. I know some people have Arduino'd their guitars or made them for 360 because these are awesome guitars and they only work for PS2, PS3, and PC. So I'm just going to go over all the components real quick. Then once I have it all put together, I'll do like an outside overview of what each thing does. And also, really we'll just start off with the main thing that I had to fix and change. It came originally with this board. It came with this board here, and these limit switches. They're not very good limit switches. They are very prone to break. If you can see this little white piece here, that's all that the switch is. This tab here is just exactly that. It's a tab that the strum bar touches, and then that little tiny white part is the switch itself, as you can see there. This one broke, and what had happened is the tab and the whole side here snapped off, but on the inside it's actually, this white part would normally put a contact down, and that contact would then be read. It'd make contact to the pins, and then that would be read by the guitar. That is missing with the tab on the side. So getting these switches replaced isn't very simple. I mean, you could search limit switch, 3-pin limit switch, all that kind of stuff, but there's no identifiers on it besides a number 17 on the side here. And you got normally open, normally closed, and a common. So the solution is just to put switches into it, like key switches like we use for regular Guitar Hero. So that is the strum switch. Here is where the detachable neck plugs in. Now, I'll show you that it's actually quite different than any of the other ones. It's not pins, and it's also not a full socket. But this is pretty inventive. I mean, it's kind of like, it's very similar to what the Guitar Hero one is. It's just not enclosed. Try to get focus here. There you go. So yeah, so that's where that goes. You have here your star power button, which is weird because that's a normally closed button. For some reason, when it references to ground, it's always on. So I wasn't able to get it to work on PC, but in testing on PlayStation 2, I tested both Rock Band 1 and Guitar Hero 80s, and the star power works just fine. Here you have your effects knob. That's for Rock Band to change your star power, overdrive effects. You have your standard whammy. And then you have your main motherboard here with one second, this button fell out. That's right here. Here, weirdly enough, you have your guide, which is really the menu button for PS3. Which, unlike other PS3 guitars, on PC this actually works as a button. Normally the guide and the menu buttons on other guitars don't work, which is just a factor of the guitar itself. Sorry, I'm looking at the solder joint. It doesn't look too great, but I'm not going to mess with it. You have your D-pad, up, down, left, right. It's marked AU, up, AO, or really AD, but it's like an O. Down, AR, AL. Then you have your start and select. What's weird about that is you have your star power as well as the select. Now, I haven't tried in either Rock Band or Guitar Hero if select also does star power, but that's just a general overview of the guts inside. And last thing is you have your battery pack here. You have the battery pack here, which does not have a detachable plug like Guitar Hero guitars, but that's okay. I was able to work on it regardless and then put it all back together. So now I'll get this thing put back together. I think I'm done with it. Everything's good, and I should be good to do further testing on Clone Hero.